Hello, hello. Welcome to a new setting. I think my office was a little boring, but plants are a little better. But yeah, this is my living room. Today I want to talk about if singleness is a punishment. Whether, if I see it as a punishment or if it's actually a punishment. Let's dive in right away. That one is not an easy one. It's definitely something that needs to be covered. So I've always had a question in my mind. What if singleness is not random? What if it's chosen? Or what if it's a punishment? What if the choices we've made along the way in our past brought us to this position of singleness, the position that we are in today? So there's a question I've been, struggling with lately, and, it's not something we like to talk about. So let's talk about it. We always hear people say singleness is a gift. You're lucky you're single. It's a blessing, trust me. You hear that often as a single person, right? I do. But, it makes me wonder, is it a gift? It's peaceful, sure, but is it really a blessing? Is it really a gift? Or can it be the result of bad decision making for a very long time? That's a good question to ask. And it's not easy to find the answer to that question either. But it's something that I've been struggling to find answers for. In my prayers, there's a lot of, God, let me know, reveal to me your plan. Why am I still in this position? And then, I start analyzing about my past and my decisions. And there's a clear path that is formed in my head that leads me to where I'm at today from the decisions I've made in the past. The Bible is very clear that our choices matter. In Galatians 6:7, it says, "You will always harvest what you plant." That verse is sobering. It reminds us that life isn't random. Our choices do have impact. The seeds we plant eventually grow. Good choices can produce certain outcomes, and bad choices can also produce certain outcomes. And when I look back at my past, I can't ignore that some of those decisions have paved the path to where I'm at today. Especially when it comes to relationships. Like choosing the wrong man, ignoring red flags. I made a video about that one. Gosh, justifying the red flags. That one was, it's still ongoing sometimes, but yeah, that's a big one. And then there's compromising values. I've done that countless times. I would say that's the culprit of the reason why I'm at where I'm at today, is because I've compromised myself. I've compromised my values way too many times. And, it makes you wonder that those decisions close the door to what God had planned in my life. Another thought that crossed my mind is this. Every time I disobeyed God, did I press the reset button on His plan for my life? Now, I know that God is merciful. The Bible does say He restores, He forgives, but it also says that disobedience has consequences. In Proverbs 19:3 says, "People ruin their lives by their own foolishness and then are angry at the Lord." That verse is gut-wrenching, right? It hit hard, that one. I was angry at God for a very long time. I was blaming Him for where I was in my life and how nothing was happening. I was blaming Him. I was angry at God for a very long time. So that verse was like a slap across the face. We blame God oftentimes for choices that has shaped our lives. Why? Why do we do that? Is it because it's easy to blame someone else? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I've blamed God for bad decisions in my life. My disobedience towards His plan, towards His guidance, has caused me to be where I'm at today. So, is it punishment? let's continue. There's also another reality we have to acknowledge. The world today is not the same as the world not so long ago. But the world is completely changed. Our culture has changed dramatically. Good is called evil. Evil is called good. There's a scripture, Isaiah 5:20. What sorrow for those who say that evil is good and good is evil. We're living those times right now. Very sorrowful. We're living in a time right now where gender is a choice and everything is constantly challenged, where commitment is rare. Marriage, like covenant, real covenant, is rare. Divorce is frequent, it's popular, and marriage is treated as optional or disposable. And someone who wants a biblical marriage in this day and age can sound countercultural, and it feels like you're swimming upstream in a culture that is going downstream, in a culture that is going the opposite direction. But at the same time, this is my motto in life, is to swim upstream, is to go against the current, to be countercultured. This is the reason why that's the name of my channel, because that is my identity. I've always been like that. And to me, that's much more preferable to live this way than to mold into society. And following Christ has always required standing against culture. In Romans 12:2, it says, "Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think." That's probably one of my favorite verses. I love that verse. And that is the reason why I'm countercultured. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's another version. And the reality is that fewer and fewer people are interested in this transformation, in this mindset. And of course, I wonder if that is the cause of my chances finding someone on the same path as me that is equally yoked, that sees the world like I do and has a faith like I do. That has a huge effect on the reason why I'm still single today. The Bible speaks about singleness in a very interesting way. The Apostle Paul describes singleness as a mode of life that allows you to focus on God full time. Like in 1 Corinthians 7:32-34, I want you to be free from the concern of this life. An unmarried man can spend his time doing the Lord's work and thinking how to please Him. But a married man has to think about his earthly responsibilities and how to please his wife. His interests are divided. In the same way, a woman who is no longer married or has never been married can be devoted to the Lord and holy in body and spirit. Paul even says something surprising in 1 Corinthians 7:7. But I wish everyone were single, just as I am. Yet each person has a special gift from God, of one kind or another. In other words, marriage or singleness are both paths that God can use. Neither one of them means punishment or blessings. They are simply different callings. I'm not saying I'm called to be single. I'm just evaluating all the facets of this season. I know God created marriage, and Genesis tells us that companionship was part of His design from the very beginning. And there's a tension that we feel between living those two truths, the marriage or the singleness. It's two truths. Both of those things are in the Bible. Marriage is good, but marriage is not guaranteed. Learning to live faithfully between those tensions, it's what is not always easy, is to understand the path that God has for us. Well, for me anyway. Is it His calling for me to be single? Or, God created marriage for us to have companionship. Is it His plan for me to have companionship? Yeah, I don't know. So is singleness really a punishment? I don't think the answer is that simple because of all these things that we covered, choices, decisions that we've made in our past, God's design, the calling, the world changing, all of these things are part of the answer. And yeah, sometimes our choices do shape our circumstances, and sometimes the culture around us make things harder, and sometimes God calls us to a specific path. But there's one thing, I learned throughout all of this research and this seeking. My purpose cannot be dependent on my status, because at the end of the day, my life belongs to God. In Psalms 37:23, the Lord directs the steps of the godly. He delights in every detail of their lives, even the steps that didn't go as planned or as expected, even the detours, even the paths we didn't plan. God can still lead us forward, even if it feels like you've taken the largest detour. And whatever the answer is to that question, what's important is that I remain at peace. I have joy in my life, in my heart. I have gladness of heart. And that is all that matters to me, is those things, peace and joy. There was a time where I was completely stressed out and depressed and angry and resentful and bitter against God because I did not have that answer. That peace was not there because I needed an answer. But now it's like, I don't need an answer. So if you're also asking yourself that very question and you have a different answer, I would love to hear it, because it's been a journey getting to where I'm at today with this answer, this non-answer really. But I want to hear what you have to say, what you think the answer is about this question. Is singleness a punishment? Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share my video with someone that you think this could help. And let's have a conversation about this, because it's important. And it's fun to dissect these things, to look into scripture and to evaluate the things that God says about us and our circumstances. So